I want you to stop for a second and just think about the choices you've made today.
Yeah, seriously, rewind your morning a bit.
Right, like think about the coffee you ordered or the route you took to work.
Or even just deciding to put on this deep dive right now.
Exactly. How many of those choices were actually yours? I mean, completely, freely independent choices.
It's a tough question when you really sit with it.
It is. Because, well, how many of those things were just an inevitable chain reaction of your habits or
Like,
your biology?
or just the random circumstances you happen to wake up in, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that right there is basically the ultimate human question, isn't it?
It really is. It's that classic tension between free will and determinism.
Right.
Like, are we the authors of our own lives, or are we just, I don't know, actors hitting our marks on a script?
A script written by the universe and physics.
Yeah, physics, genetics, all of that.
And usually when people try to answer that question, the conversation gets hopelessly stuck in these same philosophical loops.
Oh, absolutely. The same arguments over and over.
But our mission today is to break out of that loop because we're diving into this really fascinating framework today.
Yeah, specifically Chapter 7 of a pretty dense, layered philosophical text.
And the central claim here is bold. It basically says thousands of years of human thought hit a brick wall regarding free will.
Right, and it argues they hit that wall because they ignored one crucial lens.
Which is psychology.
Exactly, psychology. The premise is essentially that you cannot solve the philosophical problem of free will until you solve the psychological problem.
Meaning, like, how the human mind actually operates behind the scenes.
Right. We have to fundamentally separate reason from emotion. That's the core of it.
Okay, so let's unpack this step by step. Because before we can understand how psychology fixes the problem, we kind of need to understand why philosophy was so stuck in the first place.
That makes sense. We have to set the stage.
Yeah. So what exactly were all these historical thinkers trying to solve?
Well, broadly, they were trying to figure out if human agency is real or just an illusion.
Right.
And if we look at the historical landscape, thinkers have typically retreated to two absolute extremes.
Let's start with the determinists in Western philosophy.
Okay, yeah. So you have the ancient atomists who basically looked at reality and said, everything is just matter in motion.
Just bouncing atoms?
Exactly. We are just complex arrangements of bouncing atoms reacting to physical stimuli.
So in that view, even me choosing to, drink my coffee is just a localized storm of particles in my brain.
Yeah, completely dictated by the laws of physics.
We're basically just incredibly complicated pinball machines.
That is the grim mechanistic view, yes.
Right.
And later on, you see variations of this cosmic determinism in the Stoics, and centuries later with Spinoza.
Okay, how do they see it?
Well, their stance was a bit more elevated than just bouncing atoms. They argued that the entire universe is simply the manifestation of one highly wise universal mind.
Or nature.
Yeah, nature. And in that framework, your job isn't to change the world.
Because you can't.
Exactly. Your job is simply to accept your preordained place in that grand design.
But obviously, human beings don't really like being told they're just cogs in a machine.
No, we really don't. So you inevitably get the pushback.
The freedom fighters.
Right. The thinkers who desperately tried to carve out a philosophical safe space for human agency.
And Immanuel Kant is a massive figure here.
Oh, huge.
Hmm.
Kant tried to solve the problem by kind of splitting us in two.
Okay, how so?
He argued that in the physical world, the world of phenomena, our bodies are absolutely bound by the determined laws of physics.
Because they're physical objects.
Right. But he claimed we also possess this thing called an intelligible character.
Okay, wait, what does that actually mean? An intelligible character? Is that like a soul?
It's basically his way of describing our inner reasoning self. And he argued that this self exists independent of physical time and space.
Oh, I see.
Because it's outside the physical realm, Kant argued it is completely free to make moral choices.
Right, but I mean, explaining how a non-physical reasoning self actually interacts with a physically determined body, that seems incredibly tricky.
It's the classic mind-body problem. It feels a bit like a philosophical duct tape fix, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. And I know the author of the text we're diving into also brings up Henri Bergson as a major influence on the free will side.
Yes, Bergson is definitely a favorite in this text.
What was his take?
So Bergson looked at determinism and said, sure, strict cause and effect applies to dead, inert matter.
Like a rock rolling down a hill.
Exactly, a rock is determined. But human consciousness possesses what he called the vital impetus.
Vital impetus. Unpack that for us. What is that?
Think of it as a creative, evolutionary life force.
Okay.
Bergson believed that life isn't just passively reacting to the past, it's actively surging forward, creating new, unpredictable realities.
So dead matter falls back into entropy, but life is different.
Right. The vital impetus, the spirit of life, is inherently free because it's always inventing the very next moment.
Okay, so that gives us a good sense of the Western tug of war. But this debate is completely universal.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, the text spends a lot of time exploring the Islamic and Arabic philosophical traditions, too.
Which had their own massive, highly sophisticated debates over this exact same thing.
And a lot of it's centered around a really practical theological problem, right?
Very.
Like, if God is all-powerful, how can humans be judged or punished for their actions?
Yes, the parallels with the Western debate are striking. You see that exact same polarization.
Right.
On one side, you have the Ash'ari school, who leaned heavily into divine determinism.
So they were the determinists of this tradition.
Exactly. Their view was that God creates absolutely all actions in the universe, bar none.
And what about human actions?
They said human beings do not create their actions, we merely acquire them.
Acquire them. See, the author of our text really takes issue with that concept of acquisition.
Yeah, it's a controversial stance.
Because, I mean, if someone else actually creates the action and I just passively acquire it, I'm still basically being forced.
Right.
It's like a puppet show disguised as agency.
It really hollows out the concept of moral responsibility, because if you didn't originate the act, being rewarded or punished for it feels fundamentally unjust.
Exactly. Now, on the total opposite end of the spectrum, you had the Mu'tazila school.
Right, and they argued that for God to be just, humans must be the absolute independent creators of their own actions.
Total free will.
Total free will. But the text highlights a third path.
Yeah, pointing to the Imami school, describing them as the earliest to really carve out a nuanced middle ground here.
It's a fascinating compromise.
They argue that humans do create their actions,
Yeah.
but we only do it using the power and capacity that was originally deposited into us by God.
And this is where the text introduces a highly effective practical analogy to explain this middle ground concept.
I really want to highlight this for you, the listener, because it makes the theology so tangible.
It really grounds it.
Right. So think of it like this. Imagine you give someone a massive sum of money, let's say $10,000.
Okay.
You hand them the cash, and by doing so, you are giving them the absolute power to spend it.
Right. You provided the capacity.
Exactly. Now, if that person takes your 10 grand and uses it to buy something illegal or to fund something harmful, you, the person who provided the capital, are not the one committing the crime.
It perfectly illustrates the famous ruling from Imam Jafar al-Sadiq.
Which is?
He stated, neither determinism nor complete delegation, but a matter between the two matters.
A matter between the two matters. I like
Yeah.
that.
The divine provides the energy, the biological conditions, the sheer capacity to act. That is the capital.
But the individual human directs it.
Exactly. The human is the one spending the money.
So when you think about your own life, you were born with a certain baseline of intelligence or physical health or even a specific temperament.
Right, that's your capital.
You didn't choose it.
Right.
But whether you use that capital to cure a disease or to, I don't know, scam people on the internet, that's the spending.
And that part is on you. It's a really compelling framework. But the author steps back here and points out a lingering, massive problem.
Okay, what's the catch?
Even if we accept this middle ground, even if we agree that we are the ones spending the capital, both sides of the philosophical debate are still tracked by the law of causality.
Ah, the idea that every single effect has a prior cause stretching back to the beginning of time.
Yes.
It's the infinite domino effect.
Exactly. Like if I pick up a glass of water, it's because I was thirsty.
Right.
I was thirsty because my biology requires hydration. My biology requires hydration because of evolutionary traits I inherited millions of years ago.
So the determinist looks at that infinite chain of dominoes falling and says, where's the freedom?
Right. They'd say your desire to spend the capital was caused by something outside of your control.
So how do we actually break the infinite chain of dominoes?
This is the pivot.
Yeah, this is where the author finally brings in the psychological key.
And the core breakthrough here is drawing a brutal, strict boundary between two things we usually blur together.
The mind and the emotions.
This changes everything about how we define the self.
Okay, explain that.
Well, We constantly experience our conscious, rational mind, our reason, and we simultaneously experience our unconscious emotions and biological instincts.
Then we usually just lump them all together as me.
Exactly. And the determinists argue that every part of us is just reacting to the world.
Right.
And the text actually agrees with them on one crucial point. Emotions and instincts really are reactions.
They are bound by causality.
Yes. They are biological responses to stimuli.
Like if a bear jumps out at me in the woods, my immediate instinct is terror. I didn't sit down and freely choose to be terrified?
No, the physical reality of the bear forced that biological emotion onto you.
Right.
But here's the author's radical departure. The mind or conscious reasoning center is an original, independent entity.
It is not just a bundle of reactive emotions.
Exactly. Our actual thoughts, in a vacuum, are neutral.
I really love the metaphor the text builds toward here.
Cool.
Yes. Think of your mind as an internal courtroom. The mind itself is the judge.
Right.
Its only job is to use logical deduction to review the evidence and choose the best path forward.
And if the mind is the judge, then the emotions are the screaming lawyers.
Or a riotous mob trying to burst through the courtroom doors.
Exactly. And according to this framework, true freedom is when the judge, the rational mind, makes a ruling purely based on logical deduction.
Based on what is ultimately best.
Yes, completely ignoring the screaming mob of emotions or unconscious habits.
So freedom is basically the triumph of the judge over the mob.
Which means freedom isn't just a state of being. You don't just have free will all the time.
It's an action.
It's a highly specific action. You only possess free will in the exact moments when logic overrules reaction.
Okay, let me pause you there, because I have to push back a bit on behalf of our listeners who lean toward modern science.
Sure, play devil's advocate.
A materialist. Someone looking at an fMRI brain scan right now would say, this courtroom analogy is cute, but it's fiction.
Right, they'd say the mind isn't some magical independent judge.
Exactly. They'd say the mind is just brain chemistry. It's physical matter firing off synapses.
Yeah.
And since matter rigidly follows the strict laws of physics, the judge is just as determined as the mob. They're both just biology.
It is the defining counter-argument of our era, without a doubt.
So how does the text deal with that?
The author's rebuttal is actually incredibly sharp. They argue that physical matter, by its very nature, is dead.
Dead.
Yes, it is blind. It has no will, no consciousness, and it strictly, blindly follows causality.
Right, like gravity pulls a rock down a mountain. The rock doesn't want to roll.
Exactly. It just blindly obeys the force acting upon it.
Okay.
So the author asks this, how can dead, blind, unconscious matter force a specific will onto a conscious, independent mind?
Oh, I see.
Unconscious matter doesn't want anything. It has no goal.
Right.
Brain chemicals might be biologically active, but philosophically, they are blind to purpose.
So they can't impose an agenda.
Exactly. They cannot impose an agenda on the conscious mind because the mind's ability to evaluate and choose is inherently its own.
So the physical chemistry can create the noise. It can create the strong feeling of anxiety or hunger. But the actual evaluation of that noise happens on a different plane.
Precisely. The only thing that can actually limit the freedom of your rational mind are your own emotions.
We only lose our free will when an emotion successfully storms the bench and overrules the judge.
Which naturally leads us to ask, well, what happens when the judge is actually incapacitated?
Right. If our entire claim to freedom relies on this internal logic functioning properly, does this hold up when the system physically breaks down?
It's a great test of the theory. And the author points directly to the human justice system to validate this psychological framework.
The justice system.
Yeah. Think about the insanity defense. Why does almost every legal system on Earth refuse to punish someone who is deemed clinically insane for committing a crime?
Because, well, in this framework, the judge wasn't present.
Exactly. A severe illness essentially fed forged documents to the courtroom.
The rational, free-choosing mind was bypassed entirely.
An overwhelmingly powerful sickness or an emotional delusion hijacked the bench.
Right.
And because their logical deduction was incapacitated, their true freedom was absent.
So the text lays down a very stark equation here.
Which is, where there is no true freedom, there can be no accountability.
Wow. So the responsible party isn't the individual anymore.
No, the responsible party is the biological illness that took over.
That makes a lot of sense. And the author applies this exact same logic to the animal kingdom too, right?
Yes, it's the same mechanic. Animals possess a mind, they have a level of consciousness, but their internal courtroom is in a state of complete weakness against their instincts.
Right. A lion doesn't sit and logically deduce its 5-year plan for the savannah.
No, its biological drives are permanently sitting in the judge's chair.
It's all mob, no judge.
Exactly, which highlights the unique burden of the human condition.
Yet, for us, the judge and the mob are locked in this perpetual daily struggle for the gavel. So, freedom really isn't a natural right we just float around enjoying.
Not at all.
According to this text, it is a highly difficult, active achievement. You have to earn your freedom multiple times a day by actively choosing logic over impulse.
It requires immense internal friction.
Okay, so we've established this intense internal battle, the microcosm.
Right.
But let's zoom way out. Because if we have this localized internal judge, how does our personal freedom interact with the ultimate driver of reality?
The macro level.
Yeah, what the text calls the universal mind, or God.
Hmm.
Like, if the universe has a master plan, doesn't that just crush our little courtroom anyway?
It's the big question. The text explores this macro level by looking at two common philosophical models of reality.
Okay, what are they?
Model 1 assumes we are entirely independent minds, separate entities created by the universal mind, but existing apart from it.
Okay, and the second?
Model 2 assumes we are more like individual thoughts existing within the singular universal mind.
Like cells operating within a larger body.
Right. But what's really fascinating is that the author argues that for the purpose of free will, it actually doesn't matter which model is true.
Really? Why not?
Because in both scenarios, the individual partial mind retains its specific freedom. A perfectly rational universal mind wouldn't logically engineer a massive system just to crush the localized freedom of its own parts.
But the text does acknowledge divine intervention, right?
Yep.
It doesn't claim the universal mind just wound up the clock and walked away forever.
No, it intervenes, but strictly through inspiration or guidance.
Okay.
And because the universal mind is characterized as infinitely perfect, meaning it has no internal flaws, no biological instincts, and no negative emotions, its interventions are always directed toward the ultimate long-term good.
I really want to dig into that because the text boldly tackles some heavy religious material right here.
It does.
Specifically, it reinterprets verses from the Quran that, on the surface at least, sound incredibly deterministic.
Very determinate.
Right? For hundreds of years, people have pointed to verses like, God leads astray whom he wills and guides whom he wills, to argue that we have no real choice.
But applying this psychological framework we've been talking about, the author provides a remarkably different reading of that.
How so?
When the text says the divine leads astray, it isn't an arbitrary, malicious act of forcing an innocent person to do evil.
Which is how it's often interpreted.
Exactly. Instead, it is characterized as an educational punishment.
Educational punishment. Let's make that concrete for the listener.
Okay, so imagine a person consistently uses their free will to let the mob overrule the judge.
They keep making bad choices.
Right. They choose greed or cruelty over and over again. The universal mind essentially steps back and allows them to wander down that dark path.
It stops guiding them.
Yes, it allows them to face the harsh, painful consequences of their emotionally driven choices.
And to the person suffering those consequences, it feels like a terrible evil, like they are being actively led astray.
Exactly. But the text argues this temporary darkness is actually a feature, not a bug.
It's designed to wake them up.
Yes, it's a temporary evil that serves a long-term good, which is forcing the realization of their own error.
It makes me think of parenting, honestly.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Like, you tell a child not to touch a hot stove, and if they refuse to listen, eventually you just have to let them touch it.
Right.
The burn hurts terribly, but that pain is the ultimate, undeniable teacher.
It teaches them not to do it again.
Exactly. And the text points out something brilliant about why ancient scriptures use such punchy, uncompromising language in the first place.
Yeah, this is a great point, because ancient humanity simply wasn't scientifically or philosophically ready for a nuanced 400-page breakdown of causality and the psychological courtroom.
Right. If the scriptures read like a modern cognitive science textbook, they would have been totally incomprehensible to people thousands of years ago.
Exactly. So they used powerful, direct language like God leads astray that served an immediate moral purpose,
while burying the deeper philosophical mechanics for more evolved minds to decode centuries later.
Precisely.
Which brings us to the final, and I think maybe the most profound, piece of this deep dive.
The problem of pain.
Yeah. If this universal mind is infinitely good and only desires the ultimate good for us, why does life have to be so incredibly painful?
It's the classic question of theodicy.
Right. Why all the trauma, the evil, the struggle? Why didn't the universal mind just put us in a peaceful utopia where the judge always rules effortlessly?
The author's answer is that without that friction, evolution is impossible.
Evolution requires friction.
Yes. The author explains that our concepts of good and evil are highly relative.
Okay.
The pain, the fear, the loss, these are just our emotional reactions to reality. But if we remove those negative reactions, our minds would have nothing to push against.
They would stagnate.
They would never evolve.
There's a quote the text shares here from the thinker Abbas Mahmoud al-Akkad that honestly stopped me in my tracks.
Oh, the magic wand analogy.
Yeah. Al-Akkad argues that if you took a mature, fully grown person and offered them a magic wand to instantly erase all the pains, the humiliations, and the struggles of their past,
Yeah.
they wouldn't use it.
They wouldn't, because to erase the pain would be to erase the psychological growth.
Right.
It would erase the deep resilience they built. It would hollow out their capacity to appreciate joy, and ultimately it would erase the complex person they have become.
The joy is entirely defined by the sorrow.
And the analogy the text uses for this is so vivid, it compares the struggles of life to the scorching summer sun.
Oh, I love this one.
If you are standing out in a field in mid-August, the heat is brutal.
It's exhausting.
It feels like an active punishment. But that intense, punishing heat is biologically required to ripen the fruit on the trees.
The text drops this incredibly beautiful line here. If not for ugliness, beauty wouldn't be known. If not for imperfection, perfection wouldn't be known.
The conclusion the author draws from this is stark but incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
Without the push and pull of desiring good and fearing evil, without that constant, exhausting battle between the judge and the mob life, would be reduced to what they call the stillness of the dead.
It would just be static objects.
Exactly. Struggle isn't a glitch in the universe. Struggle is the essential ladder of biological and psychological evolution.
The friction is the point.
The friction is the only thing that forces the rational mind to work out, to gain strength, and to actually earn its title.
Okay, let's bring all of this together for you, the listener. We started with bouncing atoms and ended up looking at the scorching sun of human evolution.
Quite the journey.
Yeah, and what this text offers is basically a total redefinition of your daily experience.
Because true freedom isn't just doing whatever you feel like doing in the moment.
No, that's actually the opposite of freedom. That's being a slave to your biological impulses.
True freedom is the triumph of your internal judge over the mob.
Right. And all the friction you face every single day, the stress, the difficult choices, the outright pain, that is the necessary summer heat required to ripen who you are becoming.
It entirely reframes how we experience hardship. Every moment of frustration isn't just a punishment. It's a specific opportunity for your rational mind to assert its sovereignty.
It really changes the stakes of a random Tuesday afternoon.
It really does.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a brand new thought to mull over on your own.
Okay,
A thought experiment built strictly on the framework we just explored today.
let's hear it.
So we've established that the text defines ultimate free will as reason operating completely free from biological instinct and emotion.
Right. The unclouded courtroom, logic without impulse.
Exactly. So if that is the true ultimate definition of freedom, does that mean in the near future a highly advanced artificial intelligence?
Oh, what?
Yeah. An entity that possesses pure logic and deduction, but has absolutely zero biological emotions, zero inherited instincts, and zero chemical reactions to hijack its courtroom. Would that AI be the only entity in the universe with perfect free will?
Now that is a staggering implication.
Right.
If biological emotions are the chains that bind us, an entity without biology might be the first entirely unbound mind.
It's something to think about the next time you ask a language model to draft an email for you.
For sure.
Are you talking to a calculator or the only truly free thing on the planet?
That's a haunting thought.
We'll leave you with that.
Eh.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. And, as you navigate the rest of your day, making those hundreds of little choices, just take a second to look at the bench in your mind.
Who is making the ruling right now?
Is it your reason or your emotion? See you next time.